Well, my move into philanthropy happened before I started taking control of my investments. It triggered my control of my investments because I wanted more money to give away. So I started thinking, oh, well then I need to think about growing this. My move into philanthropy started really in my 20s when I was living in New York City and I was working on my PhD, and people were stepping over homeless people on the sidewalks of New York City, and it was just such a visual and staggeringly awful reflection of the inequity, and you couldn't pretend it wasn't happening. So for me, it started out with what I used to call my metro section phase, because we had the city section of the paper, and I would read about some poor kid in the Bronx who had something awful happen, and I'd call whatever agency was named in the paper up and say, anonymously, here's a check, please take care of that boy. And that's nice, it's all well intended and everything, but it's not, it doesn't take long to figure out that that's probably, a sort of more guerrilla kind of like philanthropy than it is thoughtful and strategic. So I started volunteering at organizations, and when I started volunteering at organizations, I got this really lucky break where I was simultaneously volunteering at one organization that was doing the work and one that was giving the money away, simultaneously. So I could see the way actually the interests of the two groups are not always aligned, and how they don't always make each other's jobs easier, and they don't really share information, and they're kind of different people. They're kind of different kinds of people. And the people who do the work, especially at community-based organizations, tend to be social workers and nurses and teachers who saw a problem and decided to form an agency to solve it. And I just loved them. They were my tribe. I wanted to sign up and be with them forever. And these are some of my deepest and best friendships still. I mean, the woman who ran the first organization I volunteered for is the godmother of my second child. So that was revolutionary for me. Just being in the neighborhood and seeing what the challenges were, it was incredibly humbling to see just everything has a consequence. Somebody donates your clothes, well, somebody has to wash them. Somebody has to fold them and sort them and put them in the, sometimes we make acts of generosity that aren't really generous, because you know what, I was trying to get these clothes out of my closet. Let's be truthful here. Half the donated clothes in the world aren't acts of generosity. You see African people in the craziest t-shirts sometimes. It's like the Riverside Country Club. And then at the foundation, which was just in its second year of funding, so they were really thinking about what do we do with this money and why. That was incredible because I had gone on a family foundation board when I was 18, which should have been my lesson in philanthropy. But family foundations don't always take their jobs very seriously. Actually, I pretty much used it as an opportunity to really bum my parents out. And so I would choose the gay men's health crisis, and my mother would be like, ah! They were a little conservative. And I would be like, score! Not a good way to do philanthropy. So it was great moral neutral ground for me to hear the conversation and listen to the vocabulary and be kind of a fly on the wall for a process. So that was a long journey that started in my mid-20s, and then in my 30s I started accepting, people started figuring out I was interested in philanthropy, I had a fancy last name, please come on my board, come on my board. I don't know. I think I was sitting on 15 different boards at one point. And that's just stupid, It's stupid from a liability standpoint, because how can you possibly really know what's going on in these organizations? You can't be a good steward of them. And I was being pulled in a million directions. And that's when I thought, oh, I have to have a strategy session with myself. What's the best use of my time, my energy? These things are finite, they're more finite than money. And, my children were little, and so that's when I kind of really started with Daphne Foundation and started thinking about being more planful